This is the podcast, Playing Above the Line, where we get into the details of what it is that's made entrepreneurs and business leaders successful. Hi, I'm Dennis Sharon, and I'm a business leader with Hartman, Blackman, and Kilgore. I've been the managing shareholder of HB&K for many years and have worked with local businesses to learn what makes them successful throughout their career.
And I'm Alan Cave. I'm also a shareholder at HB&K, a full-service accounting and business consulting firm. During our careers, Dennis and I have both been fortunate to work with many successful businesses and their owners, as well as other leaders throughout the accounting profession and beyond. We're happy to share some of their stories with you.
Welcome to today's show. I'm Dennis Sharon, and Alan, I'm looking forward to our guest today.
I am too, and it's especially exciting for me because Dr. Varner is from my hometown of Brewton, Alabama. So Dennis, tell us a little bit about Dr. Varner and what he does.
Dr. Kenneth Varner is superintendent at Brewton City Schools. He has a long history of service, beginning with his service to our country in the United States Marine Corps Reserves. He's also served in leadership roles in various civic clubs, community organizations, college advisory boards, and statewide education committees. He also is a church deacon, and today he's going to come to us and he's going to share news on leadership. But Dr. Varner, thank you for being here today and playing in our little game with us.
Thank you, Dennis. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. What we want to talk to you about is you're obviously superintendent of Brewton City Schools, and you've done a lot of things in your career prior to that, and so you've had a lot of opportunities to be exposed to leaders and certain leadership styles, and out of that you certainly have created your own style. And so the first thing I just like to throw out there is, like, what is leadership to you?
Leadership is the ability to generate followers, really. If you look around and you don't see anybody following, you're not leading. I don't think it's necessarily an innate trait that you're born with. I don't necessarily believe that it's a skill that you can learn. I think it's more complex than that. But the ability to generate followers, if you have to tell people you're in charge, then you're probably not in charge.
Yeah.
And but when you say I'm going north and people jump in there and want to go with you, I think that's where you see a leader really shine. A leader is someone that people gravitate to and want to be a part of what they're trying to accomplish.
When you look at your personal life and things like that, and how do you look at how things in your personal life maybe have affected your career path, and where you are now?
It's interesting, and if I go back and look at my career path, I really believe that everything I've done in my career was preparation for the next step. And you don't understand that at the time, and you don't realize that and see that at the time. But I do believe that you're put in situations and you're put in places that prepare you for the next level. So when I was a teacher in the classroom, some of my greatest successes I felt like were on the individual level with the student. To be able to see a student succeed was one of the most rewarding things you could ever be a part of. And I think that has carried with me through my career. You want to see other people succeed, and you want to help other people achieve success. That's a very rewarding experience for me. Whether it's in the classroom, whether it's coaching, whether it's if I was working my way through college, becoming an assistant manager at a drugstore in Auburn, little things where I was able to take on leadership roles and able to step out and do more really empowered me, and it gave me a sense of confidence in my competence, if you will. It helped me feel better about taking risk and stepping out there and really helping people. As you accumulate successes, over time, you become more and more confident in your ability to step out and do that. And as you become more and more confident, you also become more and more competent in leadership too.
Right. So, well, in your position today as superintendent of Brewton City Schools, I would imagine that's not always the easiest leadership position to be in, because you have at least 4 different stakeholders. You have the kids, right? You have the parents, you have the community, and you have the school board. And I would imagine that, sometimes all 4 of those are kind of diametrically opposed to one another as far as what they want and what they think they want. So how do you go about getting everyone kind of pointed in the same direction when you have those differing viewpoints and maybe, differing ideas about what should be happening?
Yeah, well, first of all, you don't get everybody pointed in the same direction, and those groups don't always. The opposition isn't always between groups; it's often within groups. People have different agendas; they have different opinions. Within a school system, everybody in the school system, from the custodian to the cafeteria worker to the teachers, it doesn't matter. Everybody has an opinion on how best to run that school system, and a lot of times those opinions vary. One of the things that you try to do as a leadership, and one of the things that I focus on when I'm thinking about trying to get some movement on something is I don't worry about getting everybody on board. I worry about getting the first person on board. I worry about winning one, and I worry about winning two. And if I can build 2 or 3 supporters, then I've got a team. Then I've got some momentum. And as that momentum builds, there's going to be a few people as the train pulls out of the station, they're not going to be on board. And that's okay. You're never going to win them all. But if you wait until you have everybody on board, you're never leaving the station. Mm-hmm. So my focus has always been on winning 1, winning 2, floating that idea out there. Another thing that I like to do is I read, and one of the leadership authors that I subscribe to is Todd Whitaker. Now, he focuses exclusively on education, but a lot of his philosophies are transferable to other fields. They don't necessarily have to be limited to education. One of the things that he talks about is making all your decisions based on your best people. Don't worry about what your worst people think. Make all your decisions based on your best people. So when I have an idea, if I have something that I'm thinking about and I'm not sure, is this something we can go with? I'll take and go to my best people. Some people call them sounding boards, or, everybody has these confidants that they bounce things off of. But I go to my best people and I bounce them off of my best people. And if my best people think it's a good idea, then it's probably going to be a good idea. And if my worst people have mixed feelings about it, well, they're going to have mixed feelings about whatever you try to do. So it's not uncommon for them to be resistant. But I make my decisions based on my best people. That's true in the classroom. When I was a teacher, you make your decisions based on your best kids. What can your best kids do? It's also a challenge to treat everybody like your best teacher or your best employee. But always make your decisions based on your best people, and always make your decisions and go with them by trying to get one person on board, win those battles one at a time.
That's great.
Yeah, there's an old saying out there is that a movement doesn't happen until you get the first follower. So it sounds like that's sort of your philosophy there a little bit on that.
Have you seen Leadership Lessons from a Dancing Guy?
Yes.
That's a great video, and of course that's where the first follower concept comes from. But there is a lot of truth in that, and apart from that, a lot of authors talk about building momentum, and there's books written about the tipping point and trying to get to that tipping point when you're building support for an initiative, but it starts with individuals and winning people on the individual level.
Right. Yeah. Malcolm Gladwell wrote that book, I think, about tipping point, and it's so true because by your influence and by your guidance and your coaching and all those things, you get that follower, and then those followers just continue that process for you. And I like to call it the grassroots movement myself. But let me throw this out there. So we're talking about that. When you look at this now in your role now, or maybe you want to reflect back on your career, tell me a great challenge or a great accomplishment that you had that you think still resonates with you now.
Some of the greatest successes, of course, are the successes that you have on the individual level. Mm-hmm. But those individuals can also be the greatest challenges that you have too. It's very difficult sometimes to win everybody over, and that's one of those things that frustrates me. That's one of the things that I lay awake at night and think about is about the relationships. When you talk about leadership and you talk about whether you're task-oriented or people-oriented, and a lot of people would say you would be one or the other, not necessarily true. I think you can be both. I tend to depend heavily on my relationships with people in order to get the team moving. I feel like the people that I work the closest with are the ones that I have the strongest connections with. If I spend enough time with you and I love you enough and I care about your success enough, we're going to be successful together. But it's frustrating when you try to pour into somebody and you try to invest in somebody and they don't come along with you. And so then you start trying to balance the person versus the task. And at what point does the task become more important than the person? Well, that becomes a challenge because the minute that you put the task above the person, you lose equity with that person. You lose a little bit of buy-in from that person. You'll never get that back. Mm-hmm. You can be nice to somebody. You can treat somebody great. You can do great things for people, and they'll love you for a while. They'll appreciate it. They really appreciate what you've done for them and what you've invested in them. But if you mistreat somebody one time, you'll never get them back So the minute that you put task above the person, you've burned some of that equity and you never get that person back. At best, then you get compliance from that person, but you'll never get buy-in from that person. And it's really hard to go as far as you need to go, as fast as you need to go without buy-in if all you're getting is compliance. So that's a challenge is how you deal with people on the personal level. And when you lose people that you know you're not ever going to get back, that you may work together for years, you may continue to function in an organization and get along and pass and repass and be cordial, but you're never going to get the buy-in from that person. That's a challenge, and that's something that kind of gnaws at me. If I asked you how much you thought I weighed, right, you'd look at me and you say, wow, he's about 260. And what I would tell you is that really I'm only about 200 pounds, okay? I've just been a superintendent long enough that I've gotten really thick skin. But the truth is, though, is that as thick-skinned as I've had to become, those kind of things still gnaw at you. When you feel like you've disappointed somebody, when you feel like you've let somebody down, or when you feel like you've gone in a direction and you've left people behind, those kind of things eat at you. And those are some of the challenges that really wear on me and frustrate me, because you want to take everybody to a special place, and that's not always possible.
Switching gears just for a minute. So kids today, right? You always hear that expression, oh, kids today, what is this world coming to? So you've been in education for a long time. I mean, how have kids changed from when you first started to where they are now? I mean, is it as dire as we hear it is? I mean, you know.
Absolutely.
So I hope the answer is no, but
Listen, if you watch the news right now, you'll turn on and you'll hear that our kids are rude, they're disrespectful, they're bullies, they're overweight, they spend too much time inside, too much time on the couch, too much time on technology. They eat too much, they exercise too little, they don't interact enough. So you would think our society is going to hell in a handbasket, and there's nothing that we can do about it. But I'm here to tell you, I see it every day. I see our kids in school, and I can tell you that's just not true. Our kids, they're more compassionate than they've ever been. They're more accepting of people with differences than they've ever been. They're more accepting of special needs childs, because I have one, than they've ever been. They're better sportsmen. They're smarter. They think faster. They have better technology skills. Our society is going to be fine. It's not the kids that are the problem. Do we have social issues? Absolutely. I'm not here to say that we don't, but these kids are better than we ever were, and they're going to achieve things far greater than we will ever have achieved. The next generation is fine. I would tell you that my son graduated from Air Force basic training last weekend. We had an opportunity to go out to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio and watch his graduation. And so they had 700 young men and women graduating in this Air Force basic training ceremony, and they do this every week, week after week after week. They graduate about 40,000 a year in the Air Force, and the Marine Corps has and the Army and the Navy, and they all have graduations. And so you get a chance to go out there and see it. And of course, I'm having a positive opinion of what's going on there because my son's involved. But really, if you just take a step back and look at what these young men and women are doing, what they're learning, their patriotism, their spirit, their enthusiasm, their ability to work with one another. And these people are going to go back and they're going to become moms and dads and business owners and civic leaders and people in our community. They're going to influence people around them. Our society is going to be fine. We have a great group of kids, and they're not worse than we ever were. They're better than we ever were.
That's exactly what I was hoping you would say.
I agree with you.
It's when I was in Parris Island, I had my own experience in Parris Island as a U.S. Marine, and so a few years later, I got to go back as an educator and tour. And as I was going through tour and I was talking to some of the Marines and some of the people were asking questions, it's not as tough as it used to be, and they're not as hard on you as they used to be, and whatever, because it's not what they remember. And what I told the young men and women that were there that I was talking to is, no, it's not the same as what they did. And it's not better, and it's not worse, it's not harder, it's not easier, it's different. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't make you any better or any less than the people that came before you. I think our generation has a tendency to judge the younger generation by our standards, and I don't think that's always fair. I do have a lot of faith in the future of our society because I do see our youth every day.
You have a bird's eye view and a very direct view as to what you're saying, and I love to hear that. Thank you, because I think Alan and I both would wholeheartedly agree with you that these generations, it's not even generations, these young men and young women, regardless of their age, are incredibly talented and will do wonderful things that, like you say, are even better than what's happened before them because they have the ideas, they have the capabilities, and we've given them the right to have those points of view. And I think that's a big part of it.
So every leader has a great vision. So in your capacity as the superintendent of Brewton City Schools, if you look 5 years down the road, what do you hope, you're standing there 5 years from now and look back. So where are you? What do you hope people look at and see in Brewton City Schools in 5, 6, 7 years?
Well, this is starting my 4th year in Brewton City now, and I'm very proud, first of all, to be a part of an organization that is as productive and as successful as Brewton City Schools is. The legacy of greatness, the tradition of excellence that we have will match anybody's anywhere. And I know everybody thinks they've got a great school in their hometown, and every granddaddy thinks his granddaughter's the prettiest, and I get that. But mine really is. Right?
Absolutely.
But it is a great school system. But at the same time, if people hire you to come in and be a leader, nobody hires you to come in and be a leader and say, we've got things like we want them, don't mess it up, maintain status quo. Boy, what a sad expectation that would be to have for somebody. Leadership implies change. It implies movement. It implies growth. One of our sayings, our motto, if you will, at Brewton City Schools is that everybody learns every day. It implies that everybody grows every day, not just the students. Everybody grows every day. The teachers, the administrators, the custodians, the bus drivers, everybody learns every day. That's a powerful thing. And so what we want to do is keep that momentum and keep the system moving forward. I do believe that in Brewton City Schools, when you look at the main thing that we do, the core of what we do, and that is generating a lot of community support, investing a lot of resources to educate kids so they can go be successful, we do a good job of that. And so that is a very positive thing. But there's a lot of work we can do on the edges, and there's a lot of things that we can do to enhance that. I would like for us to move forward with technology. I think it's changing so fast, and I don't subscribe to the use of technology just for the sake of having kids being hands-on with technology. I think it has to have a purpose, but I do think there's an opportunity to grow our world and to expose kids to a bigger world than what they could experience otherwise through the use of technology, and I think that's a very powerful thing. I would like to say that we did a good job bringing our at-risk kids along into the mainstream and not leaving those kids behind. But the biggest thing that I would want to accomplish on a personal level is to have an organization. If I were to leave in 5, and I would like to go another 10 years if I could, but at some point my tenure in Brewton City Schools is going to end. If I have been successful in Brewton City Schools, then when I go, we will have built the capacity within the school system. We would have built the capacity in the people that work there to maintain everything that we're doing and to carry it forward into places that I may not have ever dreamed we could have gone.
I like that. You reflect back, who or what experiences may have influenced your style, your leadership style the most?
There's a lot of people. I like to think that I have, at this point in my career, a lot of arrows in my quiver. So if one doesn't work, I can reach and get another one. And I pick those up from different people. Everybody that I've encountered has positive traits that you can learn from. Some of them have things that you observe that you don't want to do. I do try to observe people, and I try to mimic things that I think are successful, things that I would like to weave into my own tapestry. And so I paid attention over the years, and I've studied people and watched people and tried to figure out what allows some people to be successful and others to struggle. When I think about leadership and the people that I've observed over the years, I keep coming back to 2 basic thoughts there. One has to do with their credibility, and the other has to do with their likability. Mm-hmm. Take those 2 things and put them together, and I think that is what determines whether or not you're going to be successful as a leader. If you're a likable person, if people like you, then they tend to see everything you do in a positive way. And if they don't like you, they tend to see everything you do in a negative way. And so it becomes a challenge to build your likability, but also to build your credibility. And then the 2 are intertwined extremely too. Mm-hmm. So if I give you an example, I'm watching my high school principal when I was a teacher. I'm watching my high school principal at a football game, and a fight breaks out. And he goes over and he just wades in. He's pushing people back and forth out of the way. And I hear people in the crowd saying, look at there. So he takes charge. He just wades right in there and breaks that nonsense. He's not going to tolerate that at his football game. I say, wow, they see him and they see what he did in a very positive way. Well, a couple of weeks later, we're at the ball game again. He and I were pretty close. We're standing there talking. Another fight breaks out. And he takes out his phone. He calls the police, and he says, hey, we've got a fight over here. You need to send somebody over here to break it up. And I listened to the people around. They said, look, he doesn't get excited. He doesn't overreact. He remains calm. And it doesn't matter what he does. He's going to win. He's going to be perceived in a very positive way because people like him. And you could flip either one of those scenarios if they didn't like him, and they would spin those scenarios in a very negative way. So what can you do to enhance your credibility and your likability? That really is what you can work toward. I want to write a book on that one day, and I've started sorting those things out, the duality of leadership, into those two categories so that I can generate me a framework for a book. But there are things that you can do to improve your credibility, whether it's your trustworthiness, the things that you do over time to build trust, the way you invest in other people. But those things also improve your likability. So my principal was one that goes there. I also have a professor when I was working on my doctoral degree at Alabama State University. His name was Ron Lindahl, best educator I ever met in my life. And I was his favorite student. Now, I'm sure everybody else would have told you that they were his favorite student as well. But I thought I was his favorite student because that's the way he treated me. Mm-hmm. And because I thought I was his favorite student, obviously he was my favorite teacher. He worked hard to develop the likability aspect, and he could be so brutally honest on the papers that I wrote, and they come back and just bleeding with red ink. But I still loved him because I knew he loved me, and I knew he cared about me and my success. Again, a variety of people that you look at and you start analyzing their credibility and their likability, and what do they do to improve themselves? What do they do to enhance their leadership skills? How do they build up their own reputation as a credible person? And then what do they do to make themselves more or less likable? Because you lose the ability to influence people when you alienate them. Mm-hmm. So those two things are things that I look at. And again, over time, I look at a lot of different people and try to assess those two aspects of what they're doing and how that enables them to be successful.
Good stuff. As we wrap up, we ask every guest the same couple of questions. You've already touched on the fact that you really like to read. So what are you reading right now? What have you read recently that's really resonated with you?
The book that I've got I've got a book right now that I'm reading for one of my classes. I'm going back to get my certification as a CNP coordinator because we don't have one in our district. We all have to wear a lot of hats. And so that's kind of dry and not real exciting. The book that I have on my bookshelf, and I haven't started it yet, but it's called The Power of Moments, using moments, getting mileage out of moments, and creating those situations, those moments where you can really do a lot of good and have a huge impact based on a very small moment. I think that's a powerful concept, and I'm excited about that. You know, I read Todd Whitaker a lot. I like some of the things that he puts out there. If you're going to be an educator and you're not sure what you want to use for your platform, if you're a first-year administrator, take his and just subscribe to it in whole and go with that. And then over time, you'll pick up and drop things, and you'll evolve away from that. But that's a good jumping off point if you want to go with that. I like to read. There's some motivational stuff out there. I like Andy Andrews, The Traveler's Gift. He wrote a great book, one of the most powerful books that I've ever read. It's called How Do You Kill 11 Million People? If you're not familiar with that, it's about a 20-minute read. It's real short. It's only about 35 or 40 pages, but a really, really powerful message built into that. And I'm not going to spoil it for you if you haven't read it, because if I tell you about it, you need to make that discovery on your own. Really powerful book. Another great book that I really like is called QBQ, The Question Behind the Question. How do you get away from that helpless feeling, that victim complex, and really empower yourself to affect the things around you? Well, QBQ is a great concept book for that as well. And then I read a fair amount of fiction, too. I love Stephen King, a little bit of Dean Koontz, just a variety of fiction-type books.
Very good. And then if we open your iPhone, what's on the playlist these days?
Oh, my goodness. If I opened up my Pandora station right now, it's probably on, wow.
Hard question,
go to
huh?
the phone here.
I know, right? You must listen to a lot.
Well, let's just see what my playlists are here.
Okay.
So we're pulling up my Pandora now. I know Bob Seger is who I was listening to today in the office. So I've got Michael Ferrante on here. I like him. I've got classic country. I've got The Wait by the band. I've got Family. I got a little Jimmy Buffett.
There you go.
Very good.
Rubber Band Man. There's a Hall & Oates station.
Yeah.
Old Dominion, one of the new country groups that's out there. I've got The Wheels on the Bus. That is my daughter's favorite.
I remember those words right now.
Joe Cocker, Jack Johnson, Bare Naked Ladies. There's a variety of things on there.
I like that.
You get the award for the most varied playlist so far, so that's good. Yeah, very good. Dr. Kenneth Varner, thank you so much for coming to share with us your thoughts today. It's been outstanding. We appreciate everything that you've shared with us, and continued success in Brewton City Schools.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Dennis, it's good to be here. Thank you.
Alan, fantastic time with Dr. Varner today. When I think about today and the conversation with him, early on he mentioned every day is the next learning experience, and couldn't agree more and couldn't appreciate more him describing that, because it just reinforces that you never stop learning regardless of your role.
Definitely very, very engaging and a great interview. And the one thing that he said that really stuck out to me is the duality of leadership. Credibility and likability. And when you think about it, think about all the great leaders you know, those have to be two things that they have in common. So absolutely great stuff from Dr. Varner today.
Well, thanks for listening to our podcast today. To never miss an episode, subscribe to Playing Above the Line at iTunes and anywhere else you get your podcast. And be sure to leave us a rating. We'd love to know what you think about our show.
To contact us or to stay connected, follow us on social media at HBKCPAS on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.